So we're going to talk about SpaceX, the IPO. We're going to talk about Huawei and their new announcement of Tao scaling their essential workaround. It's probably not the right word, but workaround to all of the sanctions that were put onto them.
Well, right, exactly. How badly that backfired. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean,
we have 2 root beers here.
Right.
Just because you're allergic to beer, right?
Yeah.
You just pop it off.
But given the times that we're facing and the market this morning, I think beer would have been more appropriate, but I'm allergic to it. So
I'm also somewhat allergic.
Okay.
We have to cheers.
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 Okay.
It's called Stewart's root beer. So we could call this segment Stocks and Stewart's with Steve.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm also allergic, but in a different way. I break out in handcuffs rather than hives. So,
well, it's good that
I'm not drinking.
Let's put it that.
Yeah. But the spirit of having a beer, talking about stocks, because as serious as all of this stuff is, we want to make it lighter.
You have
digestible.
You have to. If you're going to get through it, there has to be a feeling of. Life sometimes can be totally absurd.
Yeah.
And, I'm not pessimistic necessarily on what's going to happen, but I'm just recognizing that the potential for real catastrophe is more palpable than at any time in my life. And I think that you sort of have to be able to manage that kind of fear if you're going to get through it.
Yeah.
And that basically psychology is, it's probably more important, my studying psychology, than my knowledge of math and things like that. I mean, if you can't control something, and no one really can. I mean, the locomotive is going, and it's going to hit a wall, and the consequences are going to be really, really great when it does. And you just hope that we can get through it. I mean, we do have options. That's sort of what I'm trying to emphasize.
Right.
I mean, this is an unprecedented period, but it doesn't mean it's a period in which we're necessarily facing doomsday, although you can certainly make an argument it could turn out that way, but it doesn't do you any good to make that argument. I mean, makes it, what's the sense then?
Right.
I mean, we wouldn't be here doing this if it were inevitable.
If you thought that there was no hope.
Yes, exactly.
Right. We would be drinking beer.
Yes, or
across the street.
Stronger, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
So speaking of the absurd, the fantastic, let's talk about the SpaceX IPO. We've published an article about it right before this live. But just for like a very brief, for people who haven't read it yet, which is probably most people, since I think we published it about 5 minutes ago, SpaceX released their prospectus. A prospectus is a legally required document that you have to file when you plan to take a company public and offer it as an IPO, initial public offering, where people basically buy stock in the company. The company gets an infusion of capital, but before that, they have to file this prospectus. So SpaceX, who plans to go public next Friday, June 12th?
Yes, June 12th, yes.
SpaceX filed their prospectus. Everyone's been reading it. Everyone's been talking about it these last few days. If I asked you to give I know it's difficult to sum it up, but if I asked you to give a brief summary of what you thought was fascinating about SpaceX's prospectus.
Well, what I thought fascinating about it is that it sort of reads like it could be a script for a movie like Dr. Strangelove. I mean, which was this extraordinarily funny but incredibly bleak at its core movie. I mean, I recommend it to everybody. I mean,
the movie or the prospectus?
No, more the movie. I think you'll laugh at the movie, but the prospectus, I mean, in a way, is laughable. But you just have to do too much work to find the lines that make you laugh in it.
Yeah.
But the movie is right out there, and I can't think of any better comparison. I mean, this is something that's just far out when you step back. I mean, a fellow named Patrick Boyle, I think, did a commentary, about a 35-minute commentary, and
I think it was called "Nice Try Though."
Nice Try Though,
yeah.
And it was among other things, it was factual, but it was basically very funny. But it was a kind of black humor that you expect, it is not to be really happening.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove warned us of the possibility of a doomsday weapon, and now we are faced with one of many possibilities of potential economic doomsday weapons, and hopefully not anything worse than that. But yeah, a company with negative earnings. One division has earnings, and they're facing intense competition across the board from none other than China. And they're raising enough money to pay off a little bit more than their debt. And they're not going to have they're going to have an extra 40 or $50 billion. And this 40 or $50 billion is going to be valued at about $1.8 trillion. So that's the expectation. On what basis?
Right.
On the basis of a claimed potential market measured at $25 trillion, which is AI. Are they the only AI company that's going to exist? Has China suddenly fallen into the ocean? It's insanity that a company that's basically very limited resources at its disposal is supposed to multiply its revenues 100 or more times, has a potential to land 1 million people on Mars in the foreseeable future. That's part of what Musk's bonuses are based on, landing 1 million people on Mars.
Right.
And then he has a way out, etc. But consciousness spread through space. Really?
Well, I believe they said in the prospectus that it's not likely that we're going to get to Mars, something to that effect.
No, wait a second, though. That was said because of a technicality. Because if he said it's likely we're going to get to Mars, and I have a feeling he might believe this,
right?
Then, in fact, they'd have to start expensing his prospective bonus, because it wouldn't be just a possibility or improbability, rather.
Right.
But if it was, a high probability we would get to Mars, companies probably functionally broke, because they're going to have to start deducting from their, their income statements his whatever $1 trillion salary. Ridiculous. These are all such absurd numbers.
Yeah.
That it's hard to make it up. Again, I just keep coming back to Dr. Strangelove and, getting into war because of your bodily fluids. Whatever the original, lines were from that. They come back to me. I was in college when I saw the movie, and I'm not going to live so long, but another 50 years, I think people having read this prospectus are going to say, huh? How could this have been, something that, was real at this point in time? But here it is.
Mm-hmm.
And a week from when we're making this interview, this is going to go public. And the demand for it could turn out to be, a make or break thing. I don't want to. What I'm fearful of is putting too much emphasis on SpaceX, because there are so many other possible things that could really be a trigger for what is likely to be, in many ways, I don't want to exaggerate it or get people too upset, but I don't think it would surprise. It would surprise me. I don't think it would surprise Warren Buffett if this turned out to be the biggest economic crisis the country has ever faced.
So not the SpaceX IPO, but just
no.
General.
Just that the SpaceX IPO could be the first.
Could be a trigger for that.
And the whole AI phenomena.
AI bubble, so to speak.
Right, exactly right, yes.
So staying on SpaceX just for a minute, because I know you said you don't want to focus too much on it, but because, so I think SpaceX, I think, rockets landing on the moon, going to Mars, but shockingly enough, in the prospectus, it seemed they're billing SpaceX more as an AI company.
Well, they are, yes. And they've gone out of their way to, stress the importance of AI. And, yeah, okay. AI, we've had facsimiles of AI, I don't know, going back 30, 40, 50. As long as we've had computers, AI is just a very, very big computer. It's hard to differentiate it from a supercomputer. These, huge, huge machines that do all these fantastic calculations. Those are supercomputers. AI basically has in its programming at its heart a probability model, and it's so far it hasn't proven itself to be anything more or less than a major ultra fast computer that basically is addressed to specific needs, mainly language and things like that. But I mean, well, there's so many examples of where it's becomes absurd to believe that this is anything near what they want to call artificial general intelligence. This is not. I mean, these large language models are not going to jump up and shake your hand and steal your girlfriend overnight. I mean, this is not going to happen.
Thank God.
No, right. I mean, and not to mention the fact that in this entire area, I mean, we're not king of the hill. I mean, we're under the delusional nature of everything that's happening now in this world. It's something I never thought I would see. But
so, in terms of the IPO,
mm,
there's several other AI IPOs. Speaking of the whole AI scene, specifically the United States AI market,
right.
Anthropic is expected to have its IPO later this year. OpenAI is expected to have theirs as well. So I want to get into a little bit before we move on to like Huawei and Chinese AI. What happens if the SpaceX IPO goes well?
Well, I think you're going to just get more of the same. You're going to get the madness that surrounds AI. And especially American AI. I want to emphasize that, especially American AI. That madness is going to continue for a while longer. The situation is going to get worse, not better. I mean, these are goals that really cannot be reached. I mean, I don't want to say impossible. I mean, you can't say nothing's impossible, but this is pretty close to, what people and human beings mean when they say impossible, the goals that they've set for themselves. I mean, it just occurs to me, if you don't believe this, look at Tesla. I mean, it was marketed as the future of automobiles.
Yeah.
Right now, it's in maybe third or fourth place. I mean, it's not, EVs don't make even a hint of a change in what's going on in this country in terms of how much gasoline we're using, et cetera, et cetera. And in China, where their market is open to EVs, Teslas and also ran. I mean, how many years have you heard about autonomous driving? I mean, basically, we still don't have autonomous driving, and except in maybe very restricted areas.
Have it in Los Angeles because I used to take those Waymos, the Jaguar Waymos. It was very weird. No one's driving.
Ask the Waymo to take you to San Francisco and see what happens. I mean,
I don't think I would.
No,
they're also very polite. They always let you go. I've heard a joke that they'll never have autonomous driving in New York City, which is where we are,
right?
Because the cars are programmed to always let people have the right of way, and no one in New York City will ever stop for an autonomous car.
We won't get a good test because the car will never move.
Right. It'll just sit while everyone keeps crossing.
But these problems we're reading about autonomous driving and getting AI to do, to respond. I mean, to be able to manage autonomous driving. This has been going on, I think, for close to a decade, and we really haven't made any progress at all. I mean, so you see SpaceX, which is admittedly, does some fairly impressive things, but it's facing a competition that's unimaginably difficult. I think that's just part of it. Now I'm talking seriously, but it.
You'll have to drink your beer, and then
maybe yes.
Take the edge off.
Maybe I should pretend.
That is real.
So, I mean, I would be very, very careful, to say the least. And
which goes into my next question is what happens if the IPO doesn't go well?
It could easily be the first domino in a set of dominoes that causes arguably, I don't even think it's arguably, I think you can assert the greatest bubble in the history, at least this economy. I'm not going to talk about the South Seas. I mean, economies like hundreds of years ago. But in terms of modern economies, this is easily the biggest bubble we've ever had. And it's just a question of which domino, what triggers, who is the first domino? I can't predict that. I wish I could. Almost by definition, you can't predict what's going to, really be the trigger point. But this,
But you think it is likely to burst at some point, regardless of what happens?
I think it's inevitable. And furthermore, I think that the longer it continues, the worse it's going to be, and the greater the risks to us as an economy and as a culture. And now, unfortunately, being very, very serious, this is it's beyond. It's almost immeasurably. I mean, you use these fantastic words, but this is almost immeasurably beyond anything we've ever seen. I mean, this makes Lehman Brothers, their bankruptcy back in 2008, look like just a bad day in the market. I mean, this could be a hideous day in terms of the economy, and we're going to have a lot of tough decisions to make when this does go down. If we choose to, I think one path, there's a good chance we'll be okay, and I think actually better for it. I mean, I'm not trying to sound Pollyannish.
No, I don't think you are, but we'll get to that one. The last question about the SpaceX IPO, should we view this, however it goes, as an indicator for the OpenAI and the Anthropic IPOs?
I think if it goes well, it would probably be a good indicator for the Anthropic AI IPO. I think Anthropic is a pretty legitimate company. I mean, it is a legitimate company. I mean, they stay sort of within the realm of what AI can do. I mean, coding, they're very, very good at. They're very good at anything that involves computation.
Yeah.
And that's why you see computation always stressed. I mean, what Anthropic got a reputation because they're good enough to crack cyber codes. Well, that's computational. Anything that's computational, they're going to be good at. And Anthropic in that arena is legitimately very, very good. I mean, they've really developed a very, very fine AI. And, anyone should try. I mean, I probably recommend Claude as the AI to try if we're just trying one, but Gemini for what it does. All these AI, I want to make something very clear. All of them are potentially extremely good. And world changing. If they're used in the correct way. But, we've gone crazy with this. I mean, it's so crazy that I'm sort of repeating.
You mean like by the craziness would be the focus on achieving AGI, artificial general intelligence, which the man who was the former head of the Meta AI sector left, saying he doesn't think that's achievable.
Right, exactly. And it's
versus using it as an aid in human creativity and human work
right. Lacan, who was the fellow who was running the AI for Meta, felt we're at a dead end with LLMs. And he was the one that basically, I think, oversaw facial recognition and the initial really cool things that AI can do. I mean, anything that you can put into a model that deals with probabilities, AI is very good at. But once you get beyond that and talk about human creativity and responses and human feelings, but creativity, it's not going to have an idea. AI, as it's conceived of today, is not going to have one. And Lacan saw this and basically left and is now working on a completely different model than the models of LLM. China gets it. I mean, that's why I think China has a major lead in robotics because they've thrown out the models related to LLMs, and now they have, robots that are running factories, start to finish, full stop, and they're even planning to sell, 3-foot robots that are going to.
It's so funny to have that running around.
Right. I mean, they will probably be mass producing that kind of
like
stuff.
a bigger Zumba.
Right.
Is that what those things are called? Those like little circular Roomba.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. But I mean, it's, and they won't be artificial general intelligence. I mean, we don't understand ourselves. I mean, how can we dream of, out of a lack of understanding, what creates human consciousness? What is human consciousness? I mean, we don't know. I mean, it's a rhetorical question with a no answer. I don't know. That's that's why it's rhetorical, and no one knows what it is. I mean, it's no one how it's created. No one knows how it is created. Is it an emergent characteristic that's somehow going to magically appear if we make these LLM models ever larger? No, it's like that's absurd. I mean, again, there's so many delusions that we're dealing with today. It's almost. I feel like I'm in some sort of fantastic world that's not one that I was born into. I mean, it is metamorphosized into something that's utterly fantastic. It's all fantasy that we're surrounded with, but the implications are I mean, anything from a
real.
yeah, they're very, yeah, exactly. No more needs to be said. Yeah, a fantastic world with very real and
Yeah.
horrible, potentially horrible implications unless we make the right decision.
Would be potentially wonderful.
It could ultimately be wonderful.
I'm going to ask you about China. I want to make sure. Okay. I just want to make sure that the live is working because I've never used it before. So China, on the other hand, also made a big announcement that they have come up with this new version. I know we talked about it. It doesn't replace Moore's law because there was more to Moore's law than just on the surface of that's the one everyone's using. But essentially, in layman's terms, just for the sake of speed, replaces it is a new way of them scaling their chips because they were cut off from
ASML.
ASML.
Right. I mean, to back up for to just back up a little bit, is that we now, in terms of let's take it to where we are at this point,
Mm-hmm.
the vast majority of people, analysts in this country, believe that we definitely have a lead in large language models when you compare it to China. Now, why do we have a lead there? And when you look at any survey of, let's say, universities, when you look at China's manufacturing capacity, they dominate. I mean, depending on which survey of, let's say, research institutions you look at, especially in the physical space, which is what we're talking about, physical sciences, anywhere, usually you find 10 out of 10 that are Chinese.
Yeah.
Sometimes only 8 out of 10, depending. But they clearly dominate this area. So how is it that we have an edge in AI or any part of AI? Well, the reason is that, we've been sanctioning everything we can possibly sanction. And in particular, we, since 2019, have been sanctioning Huawei, which is China's leading tech company. Their chip design, their chip software, or phone software, almost anything you can name, Huawei has a major role to play. They're a massive company, very egalitarian in a way. I mean, no one there makes billions or hundreds of billions of dollars. But there's a certain culture that keeps the company running, even in the face of incredible headwinds, which they faced in 2019 when we sanctioned everything. Now, among those things that were sanctioned was something called extreme ultraviolet light lithography machines. Lithography machines have been basically what has kept Moore's law going. Now, there's a lot of technicalities because Moore's law, you could argue, ended in, let's say, the early 2000s, in the sense that chips no longer were getting faster in and of themselves, but there were workarounds.
Yeah.
And we're now at the point where Moore's law is really not Moore's law anymore. It would be Moore's law.
Right, but I feel like that part just gets confusing.
Right.
The name of it.
Yeah. That should be.
But it was essentially the idea that if you made smaller and smaller transistors, it sped up the process.
Absolutely.
And they couldn't do that because they didn't have these machines. So they came up with another way to speed up the process that didn't involve smaller chips.
Well, no. They were smaller chips were always needed. Okay. Yeah. But the workaround was attaching smaller chips to one another so that, the smaller the chips, the more you could attach to one another without creating roadblocks like heat. Heat is a perennial roadblock in this map. And by 2006, if you were just using small chips to try and get increased speed, would work. You'd have too much heat. So you had to have workarounds. And the workarounds were something like called parallel computing. It gets kind of technical.
Right. But what is it that the Chinese company Huawei did that's different than new?
Okay. Well, Huawei was stuck.
Yeah.
And because without access to ASML's EUV machines, ASML has a monopoly. They built a machine that's capable of etching on a piece of silicon dimensions that are lines that are measured in terms of 7 whatever nanometers, very, very extraordinarily specialized, and everything has to be done to such scale. I mean, a piece of a particle in a room can be enough to ruin a whole batch of chips. That's how.
That's such a bummer.
It's a bummer, yeah. But to get around it, it's required like 20 years of research combining multiple companies. But the Netherlands were always at the top, and now they're able to, go down to, let's say, 3 nanometers. I mean, the machine will allow companies like TSMC. I don't want to get into the whole supply chain, but they make 3 nanometer chips feasible, and soon 2 nanometer chips, and people looking at EUV and what's potential, might even argue 1.4, 1 nanometer chips. China's not going to reach that under these current sanctions that they have. So, and we never thought they could reach it. Basically, China, by not having an access to an EUV machine, was limited for many years, for at least, I think, 3 of those, the first 3 years or 4 years, whatever, to chips that could be no more than 14 nanometers. And these chips were competing with chips that were much smaller, like 5 nanometers, etc. Along comes in I think 2024 a 7 nanometer, performance equivalent to a 7 nanometer chip. I mean, we almost died. They were. What's happened? I mean, did one of these foundries that actually produces the chips?
They sneak some to China.
Some to China. I mean, TSMC is actually part of Taiwan. It's a Taiwanese company. And did the Chinese just strong arm Taiwan? Give us the chips, or blow you up, or take.
They didn't.
No, there was nothing like that. The Chinese found a workaround. They found a way of, I forget the exact name, but using a folding technique.
Tau scaling.
No,
that one?
It was not Tau scaling.
Oh, I thought that's what we were talking
about.
That's
the more recent one. But
what is it that you're...
No, I'm just talking about the workaround that took the Chinese from 14 to 7 nanometers. That was the first step. That's the
micro, yeah.
That's in the blog. But that was really just meant to be a temporary workaround, and that became pretty well known. Yeah. So everybody said, okay, so they've got to 7 nanometers instead of 14 nanometers. But 7 is absolute, because there's no way of extending the workaround that they had.
Yeah.
The way they got from 14 to 7 was not applicable, or could not be translated in, say, getting from 7 to
3.
4, or something smaller. 7 became the new ultimate speed limit for China.
It's called micro something. Micro.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But what it was called. But it was what matters is that it was not replicable.
Yeah.
But what's going on at the same time that China introduced the 7 nanometer chip, I don't want this to sound too complicated, and it's really not, is that they were working on a much more general approach. You see, in Moore's law wedded us to just shrinking things geometrically and getting smaller and smaller. And that's still been the basis, even though a lot of Moore's law stopped working like a generation ago. Again, the smaller chips were still very, very important, and small meant faster.
Yeah.
But China said to themselves, what happens if there's a workaround, a more general workaround, where we can scale chips so that they're much closer together and therefore increase their speed? And that's what was recently announced, something called Tau scaling. Now, this is much more significant than almost anyone that I've read has made out it to be. This is really kind of I don't know, I hesitate to call it revolutionary, but it's close to. It's okay, just on the single chip level.
Yeah.
It basically enables you to stack chips one on top of another. Now, this has always been possible. This is a type of folding that you can do, and it applies to memory chips. But when it comes to stacking sophisticated chips, it's exquisitely delicate. It's really something that is way out there. I don't think anyone really dreamt that they could stack complex chips as a way of increasing the density of transistors.
Yeah.
The Chinese have managed to do this, but writ small, that means, and this could turn out to be a shock. The Huawei phone that's going to be introduced in September from the early specs, and again, they're off the internet, where people get copies of these chips just to test them, suggests that the effective capacity of this is going to be something like 3 nanometers. So it will mean that they've gone from 7 nanometers to 3 nanometers. If anything, the initial workaround, 14 to 7, is less significant than going from 7 to 3. It's a greater, percentage leap.
Right.
And that's about where we are now.
We're at about 3.
Yeah, basically. I mean, this is not
with ASML's machines.
Yes, with ASML's machine. I mean, we're at a real 3. They're at kind of a simulated 3, but from performance view, doesn't matter. Yeah,
right.
Who cares? What's the difference is that they have not only developed this for chips, and they've developed it for the entire system of AI, from chips to the whole data center. I mean, they are going to condense the data center so that, again, everything is going to move closer together on a nanometer scale when it comes to chips.
Yeah.
On a foot or block scale when it comes to data centers. Some of these data centers are the size of cities.
Right.
And they're going to condense everything. But in terms of chips, we want to just stay there for a second. What people are going to see if they think about it, and if we get that far, there is an introduction. I mean, depending what happens with SpaceX, because this is going to come in September, they're going to see a chip that's introduced, and they're going to become aware of these scaling laws. Now, what the implications of these scaling laws are is that sometime I think actually they say by 2031, they will have performance that's equivalent to 1.4 nanometers. That's only 2 years behind ASML. And it may even be closer. Who knows whether ASML will get to that. But everyone's talking, well, China's exaggerating. Well, I think it's just the opposite. Yes, I think that the projection of 1.4 is actually understating what this appears to be capable of. As in these terms, they're on the chip level, they're projecting year over year scaling, continuing at 1.3, 30% a year. And indeed, if you back up and say, what does going from 7 to 3 imply? 31% scaling, or 30% scaling. That's what that implies. That continues to be in place. We're going to see chips under 1 nanometer by 2031. I mean, they've effectively jumped ahead of us, and beyond 2031, we'll forget about it.
Right.
I mean, it's not clear that we'll ever get below 1 nanometer just using the EUV machine. But that's the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. Their ability to catch up in chips is really horrifying. It has to be horrifying.
For an American.
For Americans, yeah, for AI companies.
Right.
Our major tool against Huawei, what was supposed to put them out of business, kneecap them forever, was lack of access to a lithographic machine and advanced lithography. And they've gone beyond that. I hate to admit it, as an American who grew up in an age in which, when you talked about technology, it was nothing around the corner from America. Now, all of a sudden, we see a company that was supposed to go bankrupt in 2019, 2020, coming up in, 6, 7 short years. A clear and well-defined roadmap to just leaving us in the dust. Now, admittedly, in terms of chips, yes, we're going to be behind. It's a matter of when. It's just a matter of when at this point. But again, that's only the tip of the iceberg, because they've applied this scaling model to everything from memories to the way memories talk to one another, what they call busing, multi-physics simulations. Everything is going to have its own scaling laws, and the bigger the thing that you're scaling, the faster the scaling takes place.
Well, that brings me to, because I wanted to ask, what does it mean for Chinese AI? This new scaling law.
It means that China's AI is we're no match for it. I mean, I hate to say that. I say it with a lump in my throat. I really, really do. But they've just left us in the dust, and bringing us back to SpaceX. It's ridiculous to assume that their addressable market is the entire AI space. I mean, it's nowhere near that. And when you look at something like SpaceX or their spaceship, I mean, that admittedly is very, very impressive. I'm not taking anything away, but you're talking about a single company with very little cash. I mean, keep in mind, SpaceX right now is a debt-laden company relative to its revenues.
Yeah.
They're barely going to manage, they will manage to pay off their existing debt, but they're not going to have a whole lot of money left over after that. And starting with, 10 feet behind, are they still going to be able to compete with China, which has literally trillions of dollars to spend on whatever they want to spend it? It's absurd.
Yeah.
It really is absurd at this point. And it's, again, you have to back up. Can I still laugh at it? It's getting harder as I, speak, to be very honest. I wish this was beer, but they're talking about putting numbers on it. They're talking about scaling, if we take at the smallest level to, the very largest level. They're talking about scaling at about 100-fold level, like 100 times. I mean, you're not talking about just 1.3% a year. You're talking about 1,000% a year. I mean, it's just crazy. They're scaling. Now that won't continue, or else you'd have an entire data center before long in a, the size of a chip. That's not going to happen. But it is going to happen, at least initially. I mean, these huge data centers are going to be so reduced in size, so much more efficient, and from top to bottom, better than anything that we have.
Now, can America take this scaling law and apply it to their AI?
I don't believe so, because, not directly. I mean, potentially, I think possibly. I mean, it's right now, I just don't think our education permits it. Again, I come back to what I said earlier, and this is so tragic. When I grew up, I mean, there was MIT, there was Harvard, there was Wharton, which is where I went for business, but whatever. There were all these wonderful schools, but they're not wonderful anymore. I mean, if you look at any ranking, and I mean rankings by Westerners, if you look at how Chinese interprets the rankings, they don't brag. They're not chest pumpers. But America, I think, would prefer to ignore these rankings. But again, you don't find any American universities there. Now, why is
even on the Western ones?
Any Western, any Western university. I mean, maybe Max Planck in Germany. Certainly, no American university appears there, and this is just in the physical sciences. I'm saying if you include the medical sciences, it's a little bit different, but not dramatically different. And the medical sciences right now are not really relevant. We're just about math, computing, and physics, etc. Physics, especially, because in order to affect these scaling laws at almost any level, you're going to need state-of-the-art knowledge of quantum computation and quantum technologies and the potential for doing this. And I don't think that we have that. I mean, with our papers, if you look at, let's say, I think any of these concepts that they're talking about, special physics necessary for scaling, and you look at the recent articles that are out on that, just go to Google Scholar and type quantum implications or quantum needs for multi-physics, or I can't remember the exact name, and you'll see nothing but Chinese authors in the first group of studies. I mean, since over the period 2026 and recent period, it's dominates. They just dominate. It's frightening. It's so sad on a certain level. I mean, to see America in this position, and you're asking, is it just hopeless? No, I don't think so. And the reason is because there is a way out. No, we can't escape the bubble. The market, in my opinion, is going to head much, much lower. I think that's an inevitability. But can you check its impact on our economy long term? Short term, it's definitely going to have a very, very bad impact. But longer term, I don't know how long. Yeah, it's possible. But it's going to require cooperation. Look, I don't want to live in China. They have so many. No, I don't. I mean, it's not just that I don't speak the language or anything like that.
Difficult language.
It is a very difficult language. But again, they have AI that can probably
Right. You can put in the little earphones that translate you.
probably translate it on the fly. But no, I don't have anything. I don't have any love for their culture and their government. I mean, democracy is so fundamental in my way of thinking right now.
Mhm.
But we've gotten so far away from that. I mean, it started in 1971. We haven't looked back in terms of, uh, devolving from what we had, which was, one of a kind. I mean, we had a democratic society that was able to maintain itself at the top of the world in everything for at least 2 generations. Nothing compares. Rome in its height, anything. Nothing compares to what we had in America. And, it was a sort of a meshing of democracy, capitalism, laws that, kept things in check. There's always going to be bad things. And the question is, can we keep them in check? And for so many years we were, but then we lost that ability. China's actually, I hate to admit it, but China's kind of offering us a way of preserving, or maybe even getting back to what we once had, and that's cooperating.
Mhm.
They want us to cooperate. They're asking us to cooperate. They don't want to see this country go down the drain and devolve into something that is totally unrecognizable. I mean, maybe we have 50 different provinces, all separate countries. I mean, I'm not saying that there are 48. Different provinces. I'm not saying that that's necessarily inevitable or even, likely, but it could. It's a possibility. I mean, if we keep going the way we're going and the kinds of headwinds we're going to run up against, I mean, I say the sooner we run into trouble at this point, the sooner we'll be able to make a decision that hopefully will be the right decision and will take us on a way toward cooperation and rebuilding our society. I mean, we're a wonderful market. I mean, this country has a lot of wonderful, wonderful people in it.
Yeah.
And at its core, I mean, thank goodness, Jefferson and Madison are still at play in this country. I mean, we still have a constitution that is, I think, a masterpiece, just a total masterpiece. Now, we've done a lot of damage to that Constitution. We really have, speaking bluntly, but it's not irreparable. That's the thing. I mean, we've got to face reality. I mean, the damage has been done.
Right.
I mean, right now we don't have like the kind of democracy I grew up with. Not so much you, Megan, but basically I did. I grew up in this kind of democracy.
Be the same age.
What's that?
We could be the same age. You don't know.
No, unfortunately, it's like 50 years difference between us, but not quite, but almost more than 40 anyway. It could get back to where what I can remember is, I'll just leave people with one thing, just deviating from AI for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my earliest childhood memories was of a pediatrician, and it was a pediatrician coming to my home to see how I was. Remember him carrying his black bag in his hand. Can you imagine that?
No, that's never happened to me.
I mean, you're lucky if you get an AI that can direct you to the right pediatrician.
I've been trying to pay one medical bill for 2 weeks, and I called them like 6 times, and I can't get past the AI.
Right. How far away is that from a doctor coming to your home to try and soothe you? It's believe it or not, medicine is a lot of psychology. I don't want to get too distracted, but it's just one example.
But when you say cooperation, like in terms of, I know we talked about the head of Huawei came out in 2019 saying that he felt like America and China should work together. This message was reiterated when Trump went to China, saying that America and China should work together.
I would correct you. I don't think that the head of Huawei in 2019, I think he was really trying to affect a plan that could save Huawei, and they've had rotating different heads. But it's true. What you say is absolutely true in the sense that China has been, even within the last year or so, Nature is a very, very fine Western publication. And the head of their quantum computational area published a little opinion piece in Nature saying, and this is when it was fantastic. I mean, state of the art study had just been introduced. I mean, just I think published, probably in Nature, about what they had done in terms of quantum mechanics. They managed to slow things so far down that they were able to disprove something that Einstein had guessed was true. They were able to see that it wasn't true. It was a remarkable achievement. I mean, the fact that Nature published it, plaudits to Nature for even publishing it, that they had to, they felt compelled to. And in that issue, I believe, or issues, soon thereafter, he had a little opinion piece saying, yes, I mean, quantum computing and quantum technologies are, very, very important, and they're critical to our future. He didn't really make reference to, any of the feats that China had succeeded in. He just said we need to cooperate as a world in order to really drive this forward. And that was offering an olive branch. I mean, reason I, sort of corrected you on 2019, China was back-footed then. I mean, offering cooperation at that point is a much different, and they didn't. I mean, it would have been us to say, let's cooperate. I mean, we were the one that's trying to protect our lead back then, and they were the ones that were trying to save themselves. I mean, they were on the verge of failing. I mean, if you talk to Chinese people, and I did then, I mean, the betting was Huawei was not going to succeed. And now look what's happened in 6 years. So coming out and offering cooperation, saying that it's the best way forward when they obviously have established. I mean, I'm not saying you're going to read that China's way ahead of us in the American, you're not going to read that. You're going to have to, learn for yourself that that's actually the case, but it is the case. I mean, look at the college surveys. Those are black and white things you can see yourself. Offering cooperation in this context is very, very meaningful, and it speaks to China's willingness to see us as a global entity, to see the world on a global level. And I think that we have to take that olive branch and run with it. I mean, they're not asking us to change our form of government, to tear up our Constitution, to, call Jefferson, some sort of whatever, or Madison. No, they're very happy. The better we do, the better they will do. That's how they see the world.
Yeah.
And I think this has been an intrinsic part of their culture going back 1,000 years or more. I mean, this kind of cooperation. They're not wars. How many wars has China fought in the past? I don't know, 20 years, 30? No, none this century that I can think of. I mean, the last one I think is Vietnam, and I think it was a few days skirmish, which they lost, as it turns out. But today they have machines and weaponry that, match.
But just in terms of cooperation, you feel like that's America's best way?
That, I think, is their only way. It's not their best way. It's not our best way. It's our only way. And we don't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's so frustrating about it. What can we lose? They don't want our sovereignty. I mean, China and Russia right now are like this together.
Yeah.
Yet I know, you can make a case where they're, very similar. No, they're not similar. They have utterly different cultures. They have utterly different forms of government. And basically they have a history of not getting along particularly well. Yet they're totally together in terms of cooperation. We're half the world away from either, Russia or China, but in particular China. They're not trying to get us to change our government in any way, shape, or form. In fact, they would like us. They would like to accelerate the speed, in my opinion, that we get back to what we were in the 1970s, because that would, or 1960s, or, post World War II, because that would accelerate worldwide development, and that would be good for their people and incredibly good for the people that live here. So, I mean, really, that's what it is.
Okay, well, thank you. Cheers.
Cheers. And to no one being fooled by anything, and hopefully no one that may listen to this, stay away from SpaceX at a minimum.
No, you're not going to buy it?
No. And just be cautious until you can see a clear roadmap, because I'm talking about, best cases is cooperation. Worst cases we don't want to even get into, but make sure you're protected. And that's the last message I want to leave you with now. There'll be plenty of time to capitalize on the good times if they are ahead of us.
Yeah.
But right now we just have to worry about protecting against the more imminent bad times.
Okay. All right. Thanks you.
Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.